Well, welcome along to the OCA Days. Thank you very much for joining us again for another year. While we're waiting for the questions to come in, I guess can you just tell us how 2020's been for Odoo? Another year of COVID, another year of massive changes, and what can we look forward to next year?
Yes, I have a very short introduction to that. So let me share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Good. I wanted to start with thank you to the community. I mean, the year has been very good for us, and the community played a very important role into that. And more specifically, if we put numbers into that, for Odoo, everything exploded this year. So we run at 1,800 employees. It's basically the double from the same number a year ago. 4,000 employees, 4,000 official partners, sorry, and an average of 16 employees dedicated to Odoo per partner. So all in all, it's like 70,000 jobs working for partner, plus the ones that are in the community not working for partner. So we are probably close to 100,000 people fully dedicated to Odoo, which is massive. It's basically growing at 70% per year. And that's something I like about the community and open source, is that there is a big leverage. Every time we do something, the community do something like 20 or 40 times bigger. Like we have 529 apps in the official version of Odoo, the community and enterprise. But in the App Store, from the community, there is 32,000 apps. And you have that because the Odoo is not only a product, but it's also a very strong ecosystem and an economy. For every time we do €1, the community makes €18 of services. So the market we created, the product we created, the offer of services we created is massive. And this year, it's growing much faster than the preceding year. So we are 70% growth this year, and I believe I haven't seen such a high growth since 10 years, where we were much smaller, so it was easier, obviously. And to answer your question about what's coming up for Odoo 16, basically Odoo 16 is like a continuity. We don't want to introduce a lot of new applications, but we will focus more on refactoring, improving existing apps or features. So one of the key priorities is code cleanup. Obviously, we'll transform everything in the JavaScript side to OWL, or JavaScript framework. And the idea is to reduce the code size of Odoo, because if we reduce the code size of Odoo, the future development from us and the community will be faster, because it's easier to maintain and it's easier to develop new features if the code size is smaller. And obviously, without reducing the number of features. We are focusing a lot on the performance too, because we start to see more and more very, very large organizations using Odoo. So performance matters more and more as we evolve. Localization is a key priority. We are onboarding dozens of new developers every week or 2 weeks, I would say, to work on localizations of all the different countries. So thanks, everyone. We get a lot of feedback from the community of the missing features in the localization. And in order of priority, developing new features is the last priority for us. So we will do, of course, like every year, but we don't expect a lot of new applications in Odoo 16. I only have one in mind, which is more like Confluence or Notion knowledge base that will be integrated to your CRM or your task and so on. And that's it. So if you have questions, raise your hand or ask in the chat, and I'll try to answer my best on all the questions. Could be about the product, the company, the strategy, or everything you want.
So thanks for that, Fabien. We have actually had a question come through. I'll rephrase it slightly. So this relates to some of the Odoo SA infrastructure, really, in terms of the App Store. So obviously you've seen this massive growth in apps. And we're starting to see things like namespace clashes and things like that. And it's becoming a little bit difficult for particularly large contributors like the OCA to I guess, manage our inventory on there, particularly when we start to see a little bit of squatting across our app names and things like that. Are there any plans to enhance the App Store or look at that in any way? It's been kind of the same for a little while now.
What kind of enhancements do you have in mind?
Just maybe I'll allow Simone to talk. He's the one that has to deal with all of this.
Yes. I think Simone, you are on mute. Ah, yes.
Hello.
Hi, Simone. We can hear you.
Hi,
Barely.
everybody. Yeah. Well, in particular, we have several issues because the process of registering the apps is manual. I mean, you have to register the repository. Well, not only the repository, you have to register the repository and each branch in the repository, which makes it a little bit harder because every time we add a new branch, well, you have to do the process again and again. And also when this happens, you might have either name clashes or imagine that, I mean, we have a large ecosystem, so we have several modules depending on other modules that are in another repository that maybe are not registered, or they are registered, but some modules are failing because of the same reason. So it's a chain of failures that is hard to detect if you don't go on the App Store and you browse each specific branch and each specific repository and see the error there. And then, of course, you have to get it back, try to fix it, and then again, go back to the App Store and sync it again.
Okay.
And
So,
just to finish, Fabien, sorry. One key point here is beside the clash and beside the policy that you put in place, it would be really nice to have an API that allows us to check this from remote instead of having to go there on the App Store and do this manually.
Yeah, I have to think about it. It's the first time I get this feedback. So for sure, it's a good idea. I would say maybe we could send an email to one contributors when there is dependencies, issues, and things like that. We already have a lot of process set up, but I'm not sure we have checks on the dependencies and automatic alerts to the contributors. So that would be a good idea to add. I'll check that with the team.
Yeah, thank you. That would help.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback.
Do you want me to read the questions, Fabien, or you?
Oh yeah, if you can. Oh, I can.
So certainly. So the next question's from Hayop is, his question is, wow, it's another one, right? It's a little bit of a product question, but Odoo is tracking visitors without asking them by the use of cookies, and then there's a load of different cookie sites listed there. This is no longer legal in Europe. What's the plan to make those features legal?
I think Europe is planning to do it because they are changing the cookie law regulations to go more into favors of options that you set up in the browser rather than the painful cookie bar that annoys every visitor that have not a lot of purpose. So, or for now, our mindset is to allow the cookie bar for users, so you can activate it or not in the website the way you want. Some companies decide to do it, others decide to not do it because it's a trade-off. I mean, it's a trade-off between user experience for you visitors and having more information about the your privacy policies. We choose to reduce the number of annoyance for our users. So we choose the left side of the trade-off. I know it's not perfect, nothing is perfect, but I know the EU regulation is working on that so that we avoid these painful cookie bars pop-up that annoys everyone and introduce something more in the browser to enforce your privacy preferences. And of course, we'll follow all the regulation as they pop up.
Excellent, thank you.
Where are the questions? It's in the Q&A?
It's in the chat. So, there is a Q&A as well, is there? Oh, there is a Q&A. So, yep, I've got to look in two places at once. This is going to be fun. So I've got a question here. What do you think about... Oh, that's the question for the previous talk. I have
a good question here from Fernando. Others
there we go with that.
Were born with a free software philosophy in mind and have been closing their code. Like I believe he was talking about Open Bravo or Compiere. And some have become completely closed. I know, Compiere is completely closed. What's the probability that final destination of Odoo will be fully closed? I believe the probability is close to 0. We have I think a lot of people, there are a lot of fears in the community, not only with Odoo, but pretty much every community about that. And one case is not another. if Compiere or OpenBravo had to close partially or totally their source code, is because they had massive financial issues. In short, the business model was just not working. So they had to choose between closing the source code or just closing the company. And both were very bad things. Both would probably have mean the end of the product together. So with Odoo, it's very different because we finally, it was hard. We had to fight. We had a few years close to bankruptcy, but now we are finally sustainable and very sustainable. We are cash flow positive. We can grow organically. We don't need venture capitalists and fundraisings anymore. So what does it mean is that our business model is working, so there is no reasons to change. We are passionate about open source. I started to do open source and I continue to massively do open source because that's what we love. But love is not enough sometimes. You need to live. But the good news is that not only it's what we love, but it's also what allows us to live today. So the business model works very well. So there is no chances that we will close more than what we do today. Today we have our strategies to say the majority is open source, 80% of what we do, but we still have 20% of the features that we develop enterprise, and the 20% of features that are in enterprise enough to finance the whole R&D, including the open source ones. So no, the business model won't change. If it changes, we'll probably open source more things rather than closing more things, because that's what we want to do.
Excellent.
And maybe I can say one thing which is strange for me is that for the ones who are following Odoo since a long time, we were fully open source up to version 9, I think, version 9. And at some point we had to do a pivot in the business model and go to more an open core business model where 80% is open source and 20% is for FE. That's something I never wanted to do. So for 10 years, I fight hard. We were close to bankruptcy. I had to raise money, raise loans, but I did everything I could to sustain a business model where we were fully open source because I wanted to contribute more to the open source community. And so at some points, instead of stopping everything because it just didn't work, I had to choose, and I went to the open core business model because I basically was forced to, as a financial point of view. And it turns out that today, our contribution to open source is probably 10 times bigger than before. So what I was afraid of, which is the open core business model, because it would have mean less open source, is actually completely wrong. It's the total opposite. Now that we have revenues, we can recruit more developers and contribute way more to open source than what we could do 5 years ago. So all in all, it makes us probably one of the biggest open source contributors in the world today because of that. Because what matters at the end is not the relative values of open tools you produce compared to what you do, but the absolute values. You would have to, it's better to have 300 developers that are developing open source software, even if you have 400 in the company, rather than just having 20 open source developers over the 20 of the company. As a relative, it's less, but in absolute value of what you contribute, it's much more.
Good explanation.
Okay, so I'm talking, but I'm not reading the next questions.
Well, if you like, because we've got three that we've got three that are quite similar, but we've got one from Daniel Rice who says, "Look, the OCA has tried hard to be a neutral, non-commercial hub for the OCA ecosystem. Having newer Odoo partners aware of it would benefit their resources and the overall ecosystem quality." I guess that comes back to the open source stuff again. Would you consider, well, it says advertising here, but you know, discussing the OCA with partners or even customers?
Yeah, I have a similar question for Virginie, who says she had an employee of Odoo and she talked about OCA, and the consultant from Odoo was not aware of the OCA. So obviously we have to communicate more about internally about the OCA, because it's a very important organization for us that contributes a lot to the Odoo community. It turns out that we recruited 1,000 people in 12 months, so not everything is perfect at Odoo. It's very hard to grow at that space. And so not all the information circulates perfectly, but I'll ensure that more people are aware of what the OCA is doing and what is contributing. But it's clear that at Odoo we don't use that much community modules. Not because we don't like it. I think the contributions of the OCA are extremely valuable. and very useful for the partners and the community. But our strategy is to stick more to the standard and delegate the larger project that requires more services or customizations to the partners. So internally, our guys doesn't work with community module because we are specialists in doing out-of-the-box implementation mostly, because we try to lower the maintenance cost and the technical depth for our customer. But it's not because we like it, because for part of what we do is to try to increase the ecosystem of our partners and community. And for that, the OCA is contributing a lot. It's just that for our own service, we don't do it because that kind of service is delegated to partners. Hope it's clear.
Indeed. Well, should we change tag and talk about migrations? So one of the things I suppose that everyone in the community struggles with, and certainly to me, it doesn't matter whether it's enterprise or open upgrade or some other kind of upgrade solution, is that it's hard to upgrade Odoo. With enterprise, it's hard to get support. Support takes a very long time. You can be waiting 4, 5, 6 months sometimes for even a support person to get onto it. With open upgrade, obviously, there's the time from the release date. So this 1 year release cycle does make it very difficult in terms of both migrating our code, but also just in actually migrating our customers. Do you have any thoughts around migrations? Any plans around that?
There are different topics in this discussion. First, I should relativize. It's hard to upgrade any ERP, but I believe it's easier with Odoo than SAP or Microsoft Dynamics. The thing is, upgrades are always very complex in such complex environments. I believe with Odoo and the framework, we made it easier than traditional software, and we tried to push it to make it easier even more. But it's still, at the end, it's still hard. So there are different topics. The topics about the new version every year. I believe new versions every year are very important. That's because if Odoo is here today at the level where it is today, it's because we had a very fast pace of innovation, and we have to keep that. I mean, the competitors are evolving fast, and if we want to remain on top of the game, we have to release version every year and get feedback from the customer about this version every year. Waiting 2 years to release something would cost too much money, and it's too slow in terms of feedback loop. So for us, it's very important to continue have a fast pace of innovation. That doesn't mean that customer needs to upgrade every year. They can stay 1, 2, 3, and now we do even extension in our service contract to 5 years. So the customer upgrades at its own rhythm. That's one thing. So the third thing I wanted to say is about our service. So what we do is upgrade.odoo.com. We had a lot of issues in the past upgrading database. Now it massively changed. So we massively invested putting our best developers on the service 18 months ago. And now we start to see the results of that. Migration scripts are ready already for 15. We already are in testing phase for some customers. So in a few weeks, it's already in beta, so people can already try it. And in a few weeks, it's going to be ready in production. So much faster than before, because before we needed, I think, 9 months before releasing after a version. And the quality of our upgrade scripts massively changed since we put the right people in the team. So we know we have a large team of extremely good developers. And so upgrades are much smoother than what it used to be 1 year or 2 years ago. It's still a complex project, but for close to standard application, it's now pretty much all the time successful at that first round. Even our customer in the SaaS, we are now upgrading them every 2 months. This year, we are ready to do it. So the migration scripts must be very mature in order to do that, close to automatically. Apart from that, on the upgrade, so new version, yeah, I think I said everything. Hope it answers your questions. So I'm looking at the next questions.
They're certainly coming in thick and fast.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question from Molk. Right now, the open source flow is more or less one way, meaning the Odoo Community Edition is available for all and is being extended by OCA and others. Yes. I think it would be healthy to have a way for the open source community to influence more the open source part of Odoo, like getting more feedback or I believe more pull requests to Odoo community. First, that's what we do. 1 week ago, I sent we sent a few mails requesting feedback to all our partners. We get something like 900 feedbacks of ideas of things to improve. So we are asking to, it's not the committee, it's the partner, but I believe 50% of the committees are partners, at least. So we are really working, asking feedback to the community and processing what we do. Then there is the contribution. The contributions, like pull requests, are much more difficult because usually partners work on stable version and we work on the master version, which is the next one. And so the contribution we accept on the stable are more bug fixes rather than new features. And a lot of the feedback we receive is about developing new features, which is not accepted in stable version because we prefer stability for our customers. But of course, collaboration is not perfect. I mean, we are sometimes late on pull requests, on managing pull requests, and things like that. We try to improve, and we really ask feedback and work with the partners and the communities to move forward on these areas. I think it's the same than migration. I think we are already much better than any other ERP software vendor. It's just that at this large scale, it's difficult to be perfect. So for sure, there are probably a lot of frustration in the community because we are not on par with everything we should do, like processing issues and pull requests. Today, we don't process issues. We only process pull requests, just to be clear and mostly because we don't have the workforce to process all the issues. So we prefer to concentrate on the support tickets from the paying customer. It's already a good achievement for us if we succeed to process all of those. But we process pull requests. So if you do pull requests to fix a bug fix or so, we have a team dedicated to process all the pull requests from the community. And I think it's good. Huh? I think that we focus on the standard, or the committee as a whole focus on extending on the standard is a very good split of responsibilities. I don't think you would be happy if we decide what the OCA should do, and we shouldn't be happy if the OCA decide what we should do. I think the responsibilities are pretty much efficiently balanced, and it's like a big win-win because everyone contributes to what he cares more.
We'd be happy if you let the OCA decide what Odoo does.
Yeah. You know, it's not about the OCA, it will be, it's also about the customer. It's the same for the customer. We don't listen that much to the feedback of the customer because usually the feedback is about like adding new features, and what we want to do is to just clean up what we have.
It does kind of lead into the next question, and again, I'm going to rephrase it slightly, but certainly by the time Odoo identifies often that there is a missing feature and that is something that they need to add. So we could take the MRP improvements, for example, or something similar. The community has long since identified that same need in their own specific customers and done work on that. Is there a way that you could see that we can collaborate better at those early stages where we've done a lot of groundwork, a lot of more advanced work, certainly in our own modules, so that your first release of those modules is of I suppose more feature rich, better tested, better understood, more in line with some of the things that we've done. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yes, I'm getting it. And actually, we have the same issue with our service department. Our service department is doing a project for direct customers, and they develop things, and we don't reuse them efficiently in our R&D. And so it usually doesn't end up in the product. So we have the same issue with the OCA, or own internal service department, or on customers. And the thing is, it's very hard to be a software vendor like us, because in order to do a good product, you have to say no to 99 or 95% of the requests we get. Otherwise, Odoo will be a big hydra with 20 heads, very complex software and bloated. So it's very frustrating for the others when we say no to 95% of the feature requests we receive, because you have the feeling that we refuse everything. That's one thing. The other issue we have, and one of the reasons why I never work to collaborate with service companies, OCA, or on service department, is that we are working on different things. Building the software for millions of users, like we do when we release a new stable version, is not the same at all than developing a module for a customer. And most of the time, we have to redevelop everything from scratch. I've never seen a case where we could reuse a module as it is. We tried several times, not all the time, of course, but we continue to try. And I've never seen a case where I could use what we developed for a customer or what the OCA developed or what a partner developed as it is. All the time we have to redevelop from scratch because we have different quality standards. For us, in order to be in the stable version, we need designers, we need user experience experts, and usually these tasks are not done by the contributors. So it requires us to review everything and to rethink everything. And the third reason is the same that I did before, is that most of the contributions are done on stable version, and sometimes even older stable version. Like partners are still doing modules for 13 or 12, version 13 or 12 of the software, or 14. We are working on the version 16. So, and not only the code is different, but it's also a switch of mindset. Like we have to review everything in OWL, or because we develop new feature for the 16, we rely on this new feature rather than relying on the ones of version 14. So all this makes it very difficult to align ourselves with the contribution from the outside, whether it's from OCA or on service department. And at first, it frustrated me. I wanted to be efficient and reuse what we developed for our customer or what the OCA developed. But no, I think it's better that way. It's less frustrating for everyone. It's less waste of time in communication, because most of the time, redeveloping differently is not a big waste of time. So yeah, it's not perfect, but I believe other approach would be even less efficient.
Thank you. I think the one thing I would just question on that is that within the community, and I know you have done it in the past as well, perhaps around some of the warehouse management changes that came through, maybe in version 10, was it, when warehouse management went through the big rework, maybe version 11, is that within your partners, certainly you have some very deep functional experts, far beyond
yes,
anything that Odoo has. And so whether or not the code is suitable or not, I guess part of what some of this question was driving at was to reuse that knowledge. And also, as you know yourself, is that quite often your first implementation is something that you might want to go back and rewrite and completely refactor because you've learned things during that time.
Yeah, I agree. And that's very important. That's something we do actually. When we work on localizations, we work with partners. When we do big refactoring, whether it's for the manufacturing or the accounting, we work with key partners. We don't like to work with hundreds of thousands of people of the community because it's inefficient to have large committees. But we usually select a few partners that are knowledgeable for the area. And that's something we do. When I said that we can't easily collaborate, I was talking more about reusing the code, but collaborating about the knowledge and sharing their experience or our experience and validating our mock-ups with the way they see the business. That is something we do when we redevelop complex things. Could be inventory or accounting, or that's something we do a lot actually. Just last week, I think I sent 2 emails to partners where I identified 800 tasks where we should discuss with partners, and that was just last week. So the code is hard to reuse, but the ideas are easier to brainstorm. Okay.
So we've probably got time for 2 more questions. So I guess I'll let you pick the next one, or unless you want me to pick it.
Yeah,
I'll pick the
the
hardest one.
You can pick one if you have one. Okay, maybe a question from Tom. You said that Odoo is a focus on stability of customers' installation over new features. Isn't that a contradiction with your yearly release cycle and total refactor of code? It's not. if we look at our support ticket, we get 7,000 support ticket per month, which is also a big feedback loop for us from the customers. There are areas where we always have a lot of support tickets. We know that there are areas in Odoo that are less mature than the others, like the email marketing, for instance. And the only way to fix the email marketing is to refactor it, because the bases are not perfect. And so most of the time you can improve with continuous improvement. That's very important. But sometimes you need to raise the bar in one step, and that means refactoration in order to win in maturity. So, and it's the same for, we are refactoring everything to OWL. That will reduce probably the JavaScript code by 40%, something like that, 30-40%. In addition, it will increase massively the performance. And I believe the software will be easier to maintain afterward. But of course, it's a big refactoring. It's a big change, so we might be afraid of that. But for the future, having a more modern technology, which is easier to maintain, will help a lot in terms of stability. Okay. Do you have another question, Graham, or I pick?
You can pick if you like. I'm rapidly trying to read through. Or maybe we'll bring Simone in to ask the last question, seeing he's decided to cut and paste it 20 or 30 times in different places. I'll just read the question out for now. So from Daniel via Simone, multiple times. Last year you said we don't want to support a single community, but all communities. And you tend to say that Odoo has a community of partners. There's one main difference, in my opinion, that clashes with that statement of not supporting just one community, is that you can find tons of links towards partners' websites, aka your community, but none can be found for the OCA website. Why is that?
No, I was not referring to partners when I say that. For instance, we have a large community of accountants, and now we have a large community of teachers too. With the Scale Up game, we developed a community of close to 1,000 teachers that are doing courses in Odoo. And we also have communities per countries. We have in pretty much every country, you have the Belgian Community Association, Netherlands Community Association, who focus on their particular issues for the country. And that was my point. I don't want a single point of reference. We prefer to work with each community directly. I was not referring mostly to partners. Of course, partners are one of the communities. After having said that, we do the split between our commercial relationship and our contributor relationship. So basically, the Odoo departments are split into the research and development department and the product owners and so on. They work with community of contributors. And the sales and marketing departments, they work with the community of partners, or more commercial, could be also the customers. It's just different departments for us, and different departments have different objectives. The objective of the R&D is to produce a good product, and the objective or account manager who works with partners is to develop and help the partners evolve. But I was not referring partners versus OCA, because for me, both are important. It's just that they are not playing on the same level. OCA is more contributing to the product, so working for us with the R&D department or product owner, whereas the partners are more contributing to the business, and so working with our account manager and salespeople. And not one is more important than the other. I mean, they are all important.
Okay. Well, look, Fabien, thank you for your time. We're running to the end of the Ask Me Anything session. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here and to join us and to offer your insights. We've got a few seconds left. Is there anything that you want to finish off on?
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure also I don't have always the opportunity to talk to the community the way we did it here. So it's very useful to get your feedback and be able to interact that way. We'll do it next year, hopefully. And yeah, maybe I should continue on the fact that even though we don't always support efficiently because we are not a perfect organization, our willingness is to always help the communities. So if you have feedback or issues, feel free to email me. I pretty much answer everyone who contacts me. Send me your feedback and I will dispatch internally at Odoo to be sure we check what we can do or not. And my email is fp@odoo.com if you want.
Excellent. Look, that's great to hear. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you for your time. And of course, we look forward to seeing you next year.
Yes, see you.
Hopefully we get to see you in Belgium next year.
Yes, it will be in Belgium. It will be a physical Odoo experience. It's already decided.
All right. Look, there's lots of thanks coming through from the audience. Everybody's loved it. So thanks again for your time, Fabien, and hopefully you have a great rest of the day.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Thank you.